Piper, I'm going to give another minute, but are you ready when you start?
Ready when you are.
We will call to order the HARC chair meeting of Friday, September 22nd, 9:01 a.m. at Rebecca Hall. It's a hybrid meeting today. In attendance are staff, Piper, Jonna, and Erica. And I'm not connected. I couldn't connect for some reason. So do you see anybody else from town council or anybody I should acknowledge? Okay. Okay. So we'll start the meeting with public comment on non-agenda items. Do we have any electronic hands raised for non-agenda items? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and start with our first public hearing item is at 115 West Colorado Avenue. Consideration of an application for a minor scale addition to the existing building in the historic commercial zone district, which will increase the structure's floor area by more than 10%, but less than 25%, and result in a building that contains less than 5,000 square foot of floor area pursuant to Land Use Code 203A2C2. And an application for an insubstantial scale demolition of a non-designated secondary structure pursuant to Land Use Code 7203A3D8. Legal description is Block 5, Lot 53. Address is 115 West Colorado, Zone District Historic Commercial. Owner, Monkey Wrench Industries, LLC, and architects, ETL Architects. Staff member, Erica Jensen. Erica?
Thank you. Okay, so this is the final minor scale review at 115 West Colorado. This project is located in the historic commercial zone district and Main Street commercial treatment area. It is located inside the historic district, and there are many rated structures in the vicinity, including the bank building next door. It is a proposal for an addition mainly at the rear of the lot and the demolition of a non-designated secondary structure. Condition 1 is to revise the alley elevations to better step down in scale. And condition 4 is to revise the alley elevation to better maintain traditional building modules. The building does not appear to step down to the alley as the second level is significantly cantilevered over the first. The photo on the right shows the approach from the west. This large cantilever would significantly affect alley views. And while there are cantilevered second levels over parking in this treatment area, it is not traditional to see a cantilevered second level of this depth. It's 2 car lengths in depth. It increases the mass and scale as there is no stepping down to the alley, not even with additive forms. Condition 2 is to revise the parking area to minimize its visual impacts, and condition 3 is to reduce the surface area of paving. While the parking is behind the building, the size and height creates a large visual impact. The proposed parking is very large, accommodating 5 spaces, while only 3 spaces are required. The second story cantilevers over the parking area, which increases the mass and scale and draws attention to the parking area instead of minimizing its visual impacts. And one of the reasons it has such a large visual impact is because the parking area is exceptionally tall in height, around 15 feet, which further draws emphasis to the area. And then the amount of paving is concerning as 4 spots are paved. Condition 5 is to revise the stone cladding to be applied in a manner similar to what was seen historically and to be of more traditional dimensions. Condition 6 is to revise the metal scales to be of a material found in this treatment area. And condition 7 is to revise the corrugated metal to be a more accent material used closer to the alley. The picture on the right shows the stone extending up the second level over 15 feet. This application increases the mass and is not similar to stone's historical application. The dimensions of the stone are also narrow and rectangular and do not relate to the dimensions seen historically. The picture on the left shows a type of metal scale material being used. These are not within the range of appropriate materials and give a very modern appearance. While metal is found in this treatment area, this type of textured metal is not. Lastly, corrugated metal is not normally seen in such a large percentage of the building and not directly adjacent to the front facade. It needs to be used as an accent material and closer to the alley where this type of material is typically seen. Condition 8 is to revise the long windows to be of a more traditional scale. Condition 9 is to revise the doors on the upper south and north elevation and both sets of doors on the west elevation to contain less glass. And condition 10 is to reduce the size of the proposed doors to better relate traditional proportions. In the top left drawing, you can see that there is a window that is untraditionally long and narrow. This window is almost the length of a door. While windows with a vertical emphasis are encouraged, this window type is untraditional. And then all three drawings on the screen show very large packs of doors. The glazing on these doors create large surfaces of glass, which are not appropriate. These surfaces are broken up by mullions. They still create the appearance of large expanses of glass, which the guidelines discourage. And then all three drawings also show the size of the residential doors. These doors on the front facade and rear facade being of the most concern. On the front facade, a 6-pack of doors is proposed, and the rear doors appear to be a 4-pack and a 2-pack. Condition 11 is to reduce the number of can lights and replace those along the walkway with step lights. Condition 12 is to change the can lights and sconces to step lights on the upper levels unless required for egress. And condition 13 is to reduce the number of duplicate fixtures. The proposed addition could be consistent with the character of the area with the listed conditions, but there are concerns about the mass and scale of the alley. While aspects of the design are substantially compliant, alley elevations need to be thoughtfully considered and development needs to be sensitive to the historic character of alleys. The chair may approve, continue, or elevate this project to the full board, and I'm happy to answer any questions before we hear from the applicant.
Very good. No, I don't have any questions, and we'll go ahead and hear from the applicant. Good morning.
Good morning.
And I don't know if it helps your thinking or not, but just to give you a forward view, I think with this number of, I know we haven't seen you at too many HARC meetings, but with this number of conditions, it'll probably be a continuance. So if that influences your presentation, I don't know, but I'll let you go ahead. And again, we ask for 30 minutes or less.
All right. You should see
And could you please state your name?
sorry. This is Edwin Lindell, ETR Architects. I'd like to thank staff for their time on this application. Some of the comments have been a little contrary to, I think, some of our planning meetings, but I'm happy to address some of these concerns right now. For zoning purposes, we are in the historic commercial zone district. This is a structure built in the kind of mid-60s. It's not rated structure. The front facade has been on Main Street for the last 40-50 years and is kind of a heritage piece of Main Street. So we do want to save that kind of heritage piece of the facade. Lot size is a typical lot. From the existing structure to our proposed floor area, we are only increasing the structure by almost just 100 square feet, from a 1.63 FAR to a 1.66 FAR. And then for parking spaces, though there are only 3 required, we are showing 5 proposed parking spaces. And this is kind of a reflection of having 1 large commercial space versus 2 smaller ones. We tried to design this structure to be able to accommodate multiple uses going forward. So obviously accommodating the most parking right now is a goal of ours. Site context, the neighboring lot 55 has received HARC approval for a substantial alteration to the bank building, has a 50-foot setback from Main Street that we would like to try to utilize for view corridors. And then the other structures adjacent are not historic. The existing condition is substantially non-compliant. So the Main Street facade leads to kind of a split level nature of the existing structure. If any area of the building were to be impacted or pulled permit on, we would have to fix that non-conformity. So that alludes to a larger alteration for the structure in general. As you can see on the far bottom left image, we have a lot of non-compliant and non-fire rated window openings. So those also need to be addressed through this development. As part of this application, we are also proposing the full demolition of a non-historic shed structure, which is a challenging structure on the site. It's much too large to accommodate parking in the rear, and we will get into that in a minute. Some aerial perspectives. Try to keep this short and sweet. So on site planning context, we are trying to accommodate multiple uses, from commercial use, residential use, trash, utilities, and then ample parking. We all know that parking is a challenge in town in general. And without trying to do kind of a parking garage structure, we are accommodating 4 exterior parking and 1 interior parking to supplement this substantially larger commercial space off of Main Street. We're also accommodating trash storage, bike storage, an egress well, and electric boxes, etc. As you look at the neighboring lots, lot 55, their development is coming within almost 5 feet of property line, and they are only accommodating 1 interior parking spot for there's no parking for commercial. And then the Green Dragon building to the west does have ample parking, but again, there is room for future development over there. The existing floor plans, if you can see the street entry and 2nd floor level, second to the left, the existing parking really only alludes to really 1 legal parking space existing because of that trash storage. Though there's 8 feet between that parking, that would allow no room for egress pathway. So again, this is a big theme of ours right now. And then you can see the split level nature of the existing building. Our proposed floor plans, again, do accommodate 1 large commercial space directly off of Main Street, fixing the vitality setback of the commercial space by having an on-grade Main Street commercial space connected by a large common stair. We're also trying to provide ADA access throughout the building by using a common elevator shaft. And then also using the below grade spaces for storage, supplemental residential storage and usage as well. And then we have a kind of centralized stairwell that allows access to the alley to the back. So again, always it's a balance with these really tight lots, obviously, to accommodate all the code components on the lot and also provide functionality for the tenants. I did want to note on that our application, we were noted as we were in the AO flood zone. We are not within the flood zone, so we can't accommodate below grade components.
Okay. And by the way, I've studied the floor plans. I understand. I just don't want you to run out of time to
Yeah.
address the 13 conditions.
Yep. So I think this is a great slide to look at. I think a substantial amount of the conditions are about the alley and our approach to stepping down. So I think we're all familiar with alleys in Telluride. They're very tight. As we step down within 5 feet, almost to 0 feet of that north property line, parking, trying to turn into places, it's really challenged. So our approach to this was doing kind of a non-traditional, more modern form on a non-historic building to accommodate, again, a lot of parking, but then to put the mass and scale way above the pedestrian level, 15 feet above the alley. And with some materialities that soften the element, but also being able to step back our glazing. So on the bottom of the slide on our 3rd level proposed residential level, we are stepping back glazing almost 15 feet from property line but our structure only steps back 8 feet. And that again is to reduce the impact of those large doors towards the alley for the tenants, but also for the light spill and congestion on the alley. As you look at the top in the 4 parking spots, again, these are town-sized parking spots. It's not a great gracious parking spot, but it would allow function for the commercial spaces below and an egressable pathway, trash, bike storage. This is our approach again to, instead of pushing this garage any further north and reducing 2 more parking spots, which I know are cherished in the town of Telluride. And with this development, we are trying to accommodate as much as possible. We're also proposing a rooftop residential terrace that we are using green roofs to kind of mitigate the screening and kind of a broken railing as well. For the elevations, you can see the existing condition of the existing structure is substantially boxy in mass and scale. Does step down to the alley roughly, but does create a very tight and challenged relationship with parking towards the alley as an existing structure. And then on Main Street, we have substantially upheld the existing south facade of the structure, just with replacing fenestration. On a Main Street and alley streetscapes, you can see that our development substantially fits within the scale of the alley as well as on Main Street. You know, we're trying to reduce the impact of the future development to the alley by creating kind of a rectangular, again, it's definitely a more modern form, but it is intended to be that juxtaposition between the historic district and what is new and different on the block. You can see even a silhouette on this alley level for scale. Yes, it is a very tall kind of setback structure, but that is the intention with this design, is to untraditionally, and I don't think it works in every condition, but with the approved design of 109 Colorado Ave and any future development happening on the block, and the structures over here coming within feet of the property line, pushing the mass and scale off the pedestrian level, out of sight, out of mind, using dark materials to make it feel very subordinate, using the corrugated metals, the darker stone, and plate steels to really, again, create a subordinate relationship to the perspective of the pedestrian. On the east elevation, we are kind of accommodating some of the benefit of the historic setback and the existing parapet of the bank building and the approved bank building. What we've proposed is a kind of a saddlebag for the future development of 109 West Colorado to attach to. As we share property lines with these big mixed-use developments, we like to kind of plan for future development and give things some balance on property line. Helps with fireproofing and different openings, etc. And then on our third level, as it steps back further off of Main Street or off of the property line, we were taking a chance on an alternative material. Again, this is not a historic building originally. We did not want to make this look historic, but we are absolutely amenable to any material changes.
Okay, and again, you're 16 feet back from Colorado to the edge of the overhang, and then it's another 3 feet to the actual building, or what's the distance between the building and the setback from the front of the building on Colorado?
On Colorado, it
says here 16 feet.
16 feet to the face of our structure, but then the face of glass, that's 20 feet.
Okay, 20 feet to the glass.
to the glass.
And what you keep mentioning, what'd you say about the big building setback near you? What did you just say?
So the bank building has a 50-foot setback from this property line to any future development,
Yeah. Why not you?
because we're not a historic.
The bank building had a easement. They couldn't build on the front of it.
That's what triggered it. Okay.
On the east property line, we're proposing kind of a broken material wall. You can see our elevator shaft. It's a much more commercial element, that vertical corrugated, going to a softer wood element that again is darker in component, but softer in feel. And I think this is a good slide showing the parking and the pedestrian scale over here. Again, the intention with this is to really just remove the massing scale and put it way up high and out of sight, out of mind. This was part of initial conversations with staff, 6-8 months ago as part of this approach. And though we knew it's non-traditional in this orientation, I feel like it could work really well to accommodate parking. With the amount of paving, that is again a balance of parking and what the town would like to see for parking and use on this property. If those commercial spaces were to get separated and used individually, we would want 2 parking spaces for each of those commercial spaces. The sections of the existing structure, again, it's a split level non-compliant building. And then we shared sections in this to show how we're trying to accommodate the form and the gymnastics of all of the different uses on the property. In our area calculation, we're adding very little area to the above grade impact. As part of this redesign and addition remodel, we are saving the front facade and 2 sidewalls, creating this as a addition remodel, not a demolition of the existing structure. And we're asking for demolition of the north shed in totality. And then with our material board, you can see the existing brick on the bottom are metal clad door systems, kind of tying together this, theme of kind of commercial Telluride, setting it out a little different than the historic structures around that are very Victorian and feel, but making this feel a part of Main Street, but on the facade, but then definitely alluding to a more modern structure on the rear. We are absolutely interested in working with staff on the metal scales. That was a fun idea of kind of mixing materials, creating some intrigue off of Main Street, as well as the corrugation and the stone cladding. For the block and the scale of the block, you can see the structures to the west are substantially large in scale. There's big mechanical systems exposed. They're full depth structures that really do dwarf the scale. And then as you look at the approved design for the bank structure and how it attaches to our structure, feels balanced. And then as you look at the alley perspective and how these structures relate and step together, instead of us stepping down towards the alley and putting our mass up high, it really creates an open and balanced relationship between those 2 structures. I'm going to move to the renderings because I think they're the most helpful in this.
We got about 5 minutes if there's any other conditions you want to mention before we lose you.
Absolutely. So as we look at the renderings, these south doors are substantially set back from the face of structure. We're trying to use these waterfalling roof to wall conditions to shield the glazing substantially from the pedestrian scale. We're amenable to reducing the height of those. They fit really well with architecture as it is. But as we reduce glazing, we're absolutely open to that. And then all of the glazing on the Main Street is just replacing what is there. And then as we look at the alley perspective, again, I'd like to present the argument of pushing this structure substantially off of the pedestrian level. Making it feel subordinate, out of sight, out of mind. As you would walk the alley, it would feel like that structure is kind of not there. And then even though
We mean that big overhang projectile, so to speak, you would think it's not there. What do you mean when you're walking down the alley?
well, it's a slender element as opposed to all of these structures that are substantially on
Oh.
property line,
Yeah,
not feeling like it's crowding your area, crowding your
Okay.
parking. I mean, there's so much traffic back there day to day.
yeah.
That this would give them a chance to not feel cluttered in a very commercial environment.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that is it. And again, I would like to offer the ability to interpret that, cantilever a little bit. But it does help our development and the orientation of. a
Okay. Well, thank you. Maybe I have just a couple questions. One, I find it hard to ignore the guidelines on step down. I get where you're trying to go now with some, eliminating some of the block structure extending out so much on the first floor.
Yeah.
But I mean, we just can't ignore the guidelines, I think. But as important and not commented on by staff, and I'll ask this as a question. This is a critical block with many contributing buildings, even though you're not rated, but still, it's context of the neighborhood. And in the Main Street guidelines, it talks about the third story additions. And that was the actually first thing it says that I saw. It says, if a third story is used, it should appear as subordinate addition to a two-story building and appear that it's built on the rear, not, really seen from Main Street. And it talks about third floor should be set back substantially. How did you interpret that when you're only back 16 feet and 20 feet to the glass?
So compared to the existing structure, we're set back
I
another
know.
6 feet.
There are many mistakes in this town,
Right.
which I'm not here to weigh in on. But as we always say, mistakes of the past are not an excuse to replicate that mistake going forward. But and I think you were sensitive to a lot of things, in here with respect to views and relationships, but
So Mark, we have used the 3-to-1 and 2-to-1. I guess setback planes that you would do on commercial building or historic buildings, and we were within those setbacks as well.
Yeah.
From the parapet. So as you would the commercial building like a 3-to-1. for
Yeah.
Contributing and not. contributing.
okay, but I know one of our values is to be consistent, and we have setbacks 35 to 40 feet as an average that we've adjudicated off of Colorado. And she could show you several projects are very
Yeah.
nearby on the third floor. Just so you know.
Right.
Okay, and also I'm not supposed to solve the problems, but I was in construction for 4 years
Yeah.
and plus I care.
Yeah,
But, I did a little pencil sketch and rearranged this floor and further setback, by configuring kitchen, which is 21 feet, and living room 20 feet, and 19 feet on the south terrace, and 20 feet length on the dining room. Who wouldn't want those? But there's ways to configure furniture arrangement and so forth, I think, to get some further setback. Bedroom was only 18 feet, but all that said, though, really here, I just wanted to ask that question about the third floor guideline.
absolutely.
I know I get the 3-to-1 plane, but so I don't think I have any other questions. Again, I think we're headed towards a continuance, and hopefully you can get back and get this compliant and we can be done. But is there any public comment? I'm actually connected now. I don't see any electronically. Raise your hands. See anybody?
Just remind them to raise their hand if they have any questions.
Yeah, if you would raise your hand electronically, you have comments you would like to make, please, on this project.
I see none.
Okay. Then to deliberate, I'll just talk out loud what I'm thinking. I really need to support all 13 conditions by staff. I think they did a very thorough job and respect the consistency of what we've done in the last 10 years, not mistakes of the past. But I'm going to add a condition on the setback in Colorado, which is similar to what we've done on multiple projects, which they can show you. And then we'll see it again. And the other thing is, I wonder if, because it's not required, but before the next meeting, if you could put a little story pole, just, I'm talking about 2 poles up there so we can see from the street, the frontal facade, maybe. I don't know. That's something you can talk to staff about. I think it'd be good because I'm not trying to be extremist here.
Yeah.
Just trying to be consistent. Okay, so with that, I move to continue to the November 17th HARC chair meeting, the minor scale application at 115 West Colorado, Block 5, Lot 53, Town of Telluride, based on the findings of staff memo dated September 22nd, 2023, with the following conditions. 1 through 13 with an edit to number 1. I would like to say, have it read, revise the elevations to significantly step down in scale rather than better. And then I'd like to add a condition 14 per MS 21A1 and A2. The 3rd floor setback from Colorado should be approximately 35 to 40 feet to the glass wall, consistent with this guideline and other recent rulings on Colorado Avenue, period. This motion is based on evidence testimony provided public hearing held on September 22nd. The notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Do you want me to rule on the demolition?
No.
We would just hold and do it when he comes back. So again, I want you to be able to keep your program, but you're going to have to comply with these. So I thank you for coming back. We'll see you in November.
Can I ask a question?
So yes, we're done with this case, but go ahead on the way out
Just,
here.
would you like us to reduce parking?
I think it's very commendable what you did, but it's certainly up to your decision.
I mean, I'd love to keep that parking, but that does create a conflicting condition of the paved space
Yeah.
and the
Hey,
setback.
I can talk to Edwin about
Yeah.
it.
5 versus, you got 3 versus 5. So you work with staff and see
It's
what
just a conflict.
we can get to. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So we'll go on to the second public hearing. Okay, the next project is CNC House. It's consideration of application of minor scale new construction in the residential zone district. Will contain more than 950 square feet, but less than 2,500 square feet per land use code 7203 B1B1. And an application for insubstantial scale new construction in the residential zone district that will contain 950 square feet or less of floor area per land use code 703 B1C1. Legal description is block 20, lot 9, East Telluride. It's at 855 East Columbia in the residential zone district. Owner is San Miguel Properties, LLC, a Tennessee LLC. Haven't had one of those before. CCY Architects is the applicant, Ann Darby, and staff member Jonna Wenzel. Jonna?
Thank you, Chairperson Shamba. This is a minor scale application for a new house and an insubstantial scale application for a new garage at 855 East Columbia. The vacant lot is located at the northwest corner of Columbia Avenue and Columbine Street. The property is outside the Telluride Historic Landmark District and is within the Historic Preservation Overlay District. It's in the residential zone district and the east-west Telluride treatment area. The site is relatively level with only about 14 feet of grade change from north to south. There are 3 lots shown here on the plat. Lot 7, 8, and 9 are under the same ownership and are intended to all be developed eventually. Staff has suggested 12 conditions in the memo and is recommending continuing the application to the November 17th HARC chair meeting. However, the chair could choose to approve with conditions or elevate the application if you find it of elevated interest to either the board or the community. So the first condition was to significantly reduce the encroachments into the front and east and west side yard setbacks. The required east side setback is 15 feet because it's a corner lot. The required west side setback is 5 feet and the front yard setback is 15 feet or the average of the block. These are all compliant, but the design guidelines discourage encroaching significantly into these setbacks. On the west side, the structures are almost to the property line, and the patio on the east side encroaches to within 2 or 3 feet of the property line. Condition number 2 is to significantly reduce the height of the retaining wall surrounding the terrace at the southeast corner of the house. This wall wraps around the southeast corner of the house to level the grade for a patio. The wall along the Columbia frontage appears to be about 8 feet tall. Condition number 3 is to minimize the amount of paving. The areas circled here in this illustration show the driveway, the patio, the front stairs and entry, and then the side yard, which is covered by the flat roof, are all paved. Condition number 4 was to reduce the amount of metal cladding to an accent material. On this image on the left, metal is used prominently on the east and west sides and on the large chimney. Metal is typically used as an accent material rather than a wall cladding in this treatment area. And then condition number 5 is to ensure that the flat seam zinc roofing material has a matte non-glare finish. Condition number 6 is to revise the size and proportions of the windows. As you can see on all of the elevations, the styles and sizes of windows vary greatly. Tall, narrow windows feature prominently on all the facades. The guidelines do allow some non-traditional window patterns, but they discourage large expanses of glass and encourage a traditional size and vertical proportions of height being twice the width. Some of these you see, especially on the west, north, and south, are non-traditional proportions. Condition number 7 is to reduce the glazing and the sliding patio doors on the east facade. You see in this upper left hand there, they appear to be floor to ceiling glazing. Condition number 8 and 9 are to provide window trim and door trim. And then condition number 10 was to ensure that the solar panel racks and frames are non-reflective. Condition number 11 is to provide a complete exterior lighting plan, and condition number 12 is to avoid duplicating exterior light fixtures. That's it for my presentation. Maura Trumbull and Ann Darby with CCY Architects are with us on Zoom, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions. It was very thorough. I studied the drawings. I've walked the site and anxious to hear from the applicant. And so good morning and thanks for coming. And you want to share your screen. And you have 30 minutes recommended, but also since probably as a precursor, it's going to be continued to give you a chance to get this more compliant. You might want to focus on the 12 conditions in particular, since I have walked the site and studied the drawings, but I'll leave it up to you.
All right. Thank you, Mark and Jonna. This is Ann Darby, and we have Matt Milne and Corey Collier in the room with me. And then Mike Albert from Design Workshop is online, and Mo Trumbull is also online. So I'll start with condition 1 for addressing Jonna's presentation. And I think that with the with the conditions for this patio and terrace, the approach that we would like to present is to separate it's making the patio smaller, which allows space to have two walls. So one would be directly beneath the terrace. We'd be pulling this edge of the terrace towards the house a couple feet. This eastern edge of the terrace towards the house, couple feet, actually 4 feet. So this is 8 feet in that 15-foot setback. This is becoming 4 feet within that 15-foot setback from the property. The planting zone between the two walls allows for some screening of this terrace. And we can get into that with the retaining wall height, but this is the effort to pull that back. So you can see the significance here in the elevation. I think that is greatly reduced with what is presented. The site. The other setback encroachment that we're preparing is pulling away from the 5-yard setback with the front porch and flat roof element. And you can see in our proposed plan that we have a couple of feet beyond the setback in the side yard for the front porch, the upper level terrace from the primary bedroom and the flat roof here. This plan goes back to the setback and retaining wall relationship so that we've reduced the height. This is the preliminary application showing the plan and rendering with a wall that was intended for landscaping as a single wall. We've reduced the height. We've also reduced the length of the wall on the side yard. And this goes back to the graphic of the pulled-in terrace. You can see in the rendering that the lower wall grows out of the grade. I think it helps define that corner. We can have planting both below and between these two walls. Stepped walls allow for the elimination of a railing at the patio level, therefore reducing the height again, and a portion of the railing would remain right in this location at the window well. And I think that that is a segue into Mike's presentation. He can speak a little bit more about that site plan, the setbacks, the retaining wall, and perhaps the paving around the house.
Sure. Thank you, Ann. Maybe I'll take a step back and just share some of our thinking to date around the plan and what led to some of the thoughts that Ann just shared with us. So our clients, as a general overarching goal, wanted to have a home in the urban core, but surrounded by natural landscaping. And so everything that you see on the perimeter of this home is native grasses and native plantings that really nestle this home into the larger context. The pathway leading up from the street meanders through that and tries to break down the scale and tries to step up with a series of landings that bring you up all the way directly to the front door. There is a significant amount of grade change between the road elevation and the finished floor grade of the home. And so one of the challenges to this has been how do you efficiently get to the front door without a lot of extra and clutter and stepping that I think we felt would diminish the sort of overall purity and the simple forms of the home. I will speak to the corner of this. Initially, the patio and the wall that is in question extends from the home at grade. And the thinking was to have the wall appear more as an extension of the foundation so that there is a singular kind of pure base to the home in which then the main level, second level materials rise out of it. And so on the left side wall, it sort of steps up in a series of lifts and stairs and landings. We felt that stepping this wall down in almost a series of wedding cake directions just did not quite feel as appropriate. So what was shown was just the single wall. The thought was to have very tall, let's say 4 to 5 foot red twig dogwoods or lilac, something very complementary to the style of planting that's found in urban gardens at the base of the wall to bring down the scale. And so that would have diminished the wall by about 4 to 5 feet. And that is shown on the bottom side of the white L. On top of it, you can also see that there is planting in between the white and the gray area. And if we were to go back to the others, there was planting area in between the wall and the patio to also break down the scale there. Thank you so much. So what is missing where the hand is shown is that there would actually be planting up around the guardrail to that, and then down on the bottom side of it to break down the scale. In the right image, what was mentioned was the thought that you could maintain the plantings down on the lowest level. There are plantings that are not shown here. We wanted to highlight the stepping, but plantings that could be sandwiched in between those two spaces there. So effectively, we're just maintaining the planting, pulling back the wall, stepping down. There you go. Thank you so much, Anne. Stepping down that area.
Mike, would you speak a little bit to the paving, the condition related to paving and kind of the intent there?
You bet. What was originally proposed was that paving was connected or extended from the building to the property line in a couple of areas. And that is, as we think about the project, the same owner owns the adjacent lot, and see how you could connect those. It is not correct to say, and sorry if it was misinterpreted that way, that the entire western edge is paving. PA for our drawings actually is planted area. And so I am sorry if that got confused. What you can see is off the left-hand side of either image, there's a door that extends out to a small patio. There is a connector on the northern side that leads to a stairway. But for the most part, the home is surrounded by planting on there. The front entry walk, we have taken a look at, and we are able to pull that stairway and everything over to the right to provide a little bit more planting in between that and the property line, if the commission would desire that. The final area would be the parking to the northeast. So there is 2 gray tones, and we are dealing with some significant grading, like many properties in Telluride. And so the northern gray slopes down in some areas up to 12% to get down to the garage level. The darker gray area right below that, we could certainly envision that turning into a gravel material. The grade, as the hillside slopes down, it meets the elevation of the garage and the residence. And so that darker gray area is much more flat And we feel that there's no problem certainly converting that to a gravel or a less paved area.
Thanks, Mike.
You bet.
So back to kind of be a segue into some of the comments on the building and the materials. I'd like to go back to our original design concept, in that Lot 9 was really wanting to respond to the context of the neighborhood in this area in Telluride. And with the directionality and the simple gabled forms, we've assembled a grouping strengthening the primary gabled forms with wood, and then the additive white boxes that you see in this rendering would be clad in an alternative material, and we're recommending metal. So majority of the project is wood and various textures, which responds to a pedestrian scale as you're walking down the street and through the neighborhood. So the accessory structure, which is our garage, and then the main house, have variations of wood texture, all in the same color. And then the metal is something that is growing from our porch roof concept, being a flat roof, and it's also used to surround our steel windows, so that we're trying to reduce the amount of materials with stone, wood, and metal, but provide interest in the texture and variation. This is I'll get to that in a moment. This is the street side from Columbia. And so again, it shows the primary gabled forms in wood, and then our front porch form is in metal, and that is a flat roof. So that elevation really responds to the directionality to draw you in from the street. The front porch is very much in view, and we have the entry steps through a series of planted walls, as Mike just pointed out, to draw you into this modern interpretation of a front porch with some perforated screen that surrounds it. So this is back to the original application, so you'll see some modifications in a moment. The west elevation of the house has the accessory building to the left, the two-story element with a flat story element responding more to a pedestrian scale and bringing in this metal form that's our entry porch. And then this is the living form. This is a series of steps to get up to the living level, and then another series of steps to an alleyway and a rear entry that will most likely be used by the residents. And then the next elevation is the north side of the property, being the accessory structure, which steps down in scale, and then you can see the primary structure behind.
And just to add one thing on the north elevation, one of the reasons we have a retaining wall on the north side is to create a pocket of space, since we do have that sloping hillside, to tuck the mechanical equipment, the air source heat pumps, down into a little bit of a recessed retained area. So that does add to a little bit of the paving, but the goal was to have that recessed and kind of tucked into the hillside, out of view from the neighborhood as you approach the house from behind. So strategically trying to use the hillside to help us hide some of the mechanical equipment.
Thank you. So primary materials are either a flat seam or a standing seam zinc metal roof, non-reflective, wood siding, and steel windows and a perforated steel screen. So I'll go back to the street elevation. This is the condition that we just talked about, bringing the scale down to this. So in reducing our retaining walls, I think that it's not uncommon to the other homes along the street and in the neighborhood to have some terraced walls that add interest and really anchor the home as its foundation for what the home is growing out of as the slope rises up to the site. So with what was just described, we're showing this preliminary form with metal and wood. This goes back to the original concept with really strengthening the primary gabled forms with wood and allowing these additive flat roof forms to act as an assembly or a series of forms that are put together with purpose. And this is the street elevation. Roofing materials, not a problem to be matched. That is the intention with a zinc metal roof. So if we talk about condition regarding the window and the sizes of windows, we wanted to identify an area for making these reductions and go through the reasoning behind that. And we thought that the stair, which is facing the west and north, is a great place to start with that. So we've greatly reduced the glazing on the west side by about 40%. I think the ratio of window to wall is more traditional and more in form with the neighborhood. We're really starting to build upon the traditional double hung and stacking it. And so we're creating lots of light still on this west elevation, but we're allowing it to screen any solar gain as well as any visibility from the west elevation, since our owners have decided not to make any improvements on the adjacent lot, 7, excuse me.
And I think our goal with this exhibit was to kind of focus on one area to describe our, we want to work with staff and Mark with you to reduce glazing appropriately while still kind of maintaining our goals in terms of views and kind of access to such an incredible site. So want to balance, the reduction of glazing. And we think there are a couple areas where we can make some significant reductions and then work with staff to kind of reduce glazing in maybe more, a little bit more kind of scale and form of windows throughout the project.
Good.
Thank you. And on the north elevation, a similar move is to bring down the height of what was shown and have a better proportion of window to wall ratio and still allow some natural light into the north side of the residence. So for sliding doors, which are reading as 9-foot high full panel glazing, we are also proposing adding a little bit of it would be a kick plate or a bottom rail that's 24 inches to these openings so that it can reduce the impact of glazing be more perceived from the street level. It also adds a little bit of privacy in the interior, looking up from the street. we're proposing that for all of our sliding glass doors. So it would happen at the living room and then at this primary bedroom.
And I think maybe to speak to the intent of some of the window scale, we've liked kind of in a couple areas, you see it in the foreground here on the front of the living room. There's one on the west side, these maybe a little bit exaggerated double hungs, right? Like kind of taking the traditional language of double hungs, and particularly as we get to this east end of town, there's a lot, less developed lots around us, but there's a lot of more, there's not as much rigor in the pattern of development and the kind of openings and windows. There's a little bit more variation in the structures that have been built over time. So a lot of our windows do follow that traditional proportion, but there are a couple of these more feature windows that are that kind of exaggerated double hung is how we've thought about them. So the window in the foreground being an example of that.
In addressing the door and window trim, I think that we also want to update the version of trim, since it is a newer building, but really draw upon the historical trim. And historically, the homes traditionally in the neighborhood have a wood or an aluminum clad for newer projects, frame and sash around their window. And so it's a lot more scale and proportion. What we're proposing with our steel window system is a smaller refined trim that can be in scale to the actual window frame itself. And in using that, it would be intentionally designed to fit within the different texture within the wood clad walls. So we have a variation of texture, and the trim is going to respond to that as it frames our fenestration. And this would apply to both doors and windows. However, the doors within the metal may be different because they're a larger multi-panel door that very much needs to be integrated into that design. For the rest of the conditions, we are willing to address conditions 10, 11, and 12 regarding the lighting, and I think that that is forthcoming, but our consultants have been, we have a consultant doing lighting for the site, we have a consultant doing lighting for the house, and a little bit more from interior. And so what we have located on the house in terms of wall-mounted sconces are the intention, but to have one overall plan, we are willing to consolidate that for the next presentation to show both site lighting and building lighting in one place. And if I may go to the renderings and just flip back through some before and after our initial concept, previous to the conditions by staff. This is the response to the conditions on from a site level and materiality. You can actually see the sashes that are at the bottom of the doors in these renderings as well. This is our front elevation with the stepped walls. Very pedestrian scale where you're walking through the garden, getting up to the front porch. And then this is the materiality again. So if we draw upon a basic wood siding material that's maybe a 2x10 that has a fairly tight vertical joint, our garage door in the current intention is to be part of that. We have a wood flat screen that's going to allow filtered light into more private spaces, metal cladding, panels, chimney, and additive form, and then this metal grows into the surround for the living room glazing, and this texture is a little bit more pronounced at the front door. More of a modern interpretation of a board and batten siding. So
I think
that's, go ahead.
Yeah, I
Mom.
was just gonna summarize a little bit. I think Mark and Jonna, obviously we want to work with you guys and work through the conditions, but wanted to at least show some intent of how we may address these. So would be interested in the dialogue and the discussion and would welcome any questions. But I think overall, our intent was to have a fairly simple design, fairly straightforward, appropriate to the neighborhood in terms of these collected gable forms clad in wood with the flat roof additive elements that have a secondary material, which is the seal panel siding.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay, yeah, let's have a little dialogue and maybe some questions. That's a good elevation to start on materiality. The guidelines and Jonna's condition on number 4 of reducing. I'm trying to see what could make it compliant, and I think you can work with staff to get there. To me, the most overuse of metal that I couldn't, in my right state of mind, say is an accent is this elevation with the flat roofed area and the expanse of that metal cladding. However, could you go back to the other slide looking, I think on the west side of the front door entry? Just to give you some general impressions anyway. And again, you talk with staff and, see, to me, that looks like an accent piece and adds interest, and it's a very creative house, that's for sure, design in the house. And I think I'm less sensitive to that than that 2-story element that's metal, but maybe there's a way to do part of that 2-story. I don't know. Again, I'm going to refer you to staff, but since you asked specifically some feedback, I'm just responding to that. A couple, and I was encouraged to hear some of the ideas, starting with the setbacks and glazing of what you might do. So you've been down this road before, and we've seen you. I think you know the path forward, and working with staff to get there. I have a couple questions. One, what's the dimension of that fireplace? If you could go back to probably the west elevation or southwest, it just looks somewhat overpowering, and it may be a bad angle or whatever. What's the dimension of that chimney?
Width or height?
Length the two, width and depth.
It's, as this is shown, it's about 30 inches deep, and the width is 6'6".
6'6"?
Yes. 6'6" to 7. It's been.
Jeez. Okay. Width. Okay. I'm asking as a question. Obviously, you can tell I'm a little concerned by it being overpowering, and even though we're in East-West District, there's just nothing historical that was almost 7 foot wide. So I may have a comment on that. You're welcome to comment, but that might be part of a condition. And then the only other question I have, which was not one of the conditions, but I really took this to heart on EWT 20 mass and scale. As you've acknowledged, new design approaches are encouraged, but should respect the mass and scale of the structures found historically. And moreover, it says on 20C1 that modules, which you have 4 gable modules, 2 flat modules. I really couldn't say this is a simple form when you showed me. Yeah, you can see that. I don't think this is a simple form, but I'm not opposed to it. But it says a single form should remain the dominant element from the overall mass and scale, not to become too fragmented. So if you could put up H115, I'd like to ask you a question about that, which is south elevation. It's 415. Okay, and if you could, can you zoom in on that a little bit? Okay, so when I take this guideline that a single form should remain the dominant element, I see the element above that entry area and then these two gables and then another big form to the upper right with that ridge line coming straight across there in that gable that runs east-west. My question is, on my drawing versus this picture, it looks like that gable running east and west was taller than the front facing gable. But here on this that you're just putting on, as you put it on the screen, it looks like it's below. How far below is that east-west running ridge line below the top gable on the left?
So in this original application, the dormer, the gabled dormer to the right that's running east-west is 2.5 feet lower than the ridge line of the primary gable that's set back. Working with Jonna through some staff comments in relation to our grade, we reduced the height because our average grade plane came down, and so now the ridge lines are consistent at the primary stepped-back gable and the dormer element. I believe to have that read more as a dormer as opposed to a primary. There is an opportunity to drop that ridge line down and highlight that it's a dormer as opposed to a main ridge
Good.
line.
I thank you to your consideration of that. I don't really have any other questions. So I think
Could I
if we can get
make
there.
a clarifying
Sorry.
statement? Do you mind if I clarify a little bit about the process?
ahead.
So it appears that the applicants have thought about the conditions provided in the memo, which is appreciated, but they've also provided some possible solutions which are not part of the packet. And so I just want to remind the applicants and the chair that the chair will not be deliberating on those
Right,
new changes that we haven't had a chance to review.
right. And
So, and we appreciate your thinking forward, but
yep, and I'm clear on those. That's why I said I was encouraged
Yes.
because they let the cat out of the bag. a little
okay,
bit, but
just so it's clear
but I-
that you'll be making your
right,
decision based on what's in front of you in the packet.
correct.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
And-
Jonathan. Yeah, we just wanted to, in a show of good faith of like,
Yes, I appreciate that you're thinking forward.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like when you're playing uke or sprouting one. Anybody's from the Midwest remembers that game?
Yeah.
Okay,
Or
sprouting's not allowed here. Okay, with that attempt at humor, how about any public comment?
I have a question. I live across the
Could you
street.
Well, state your name and then go ahead.
Oh,
and
I'm
answer.
sorry. My name is Carl Kravitz. I'm at 854 East Columbia.
Okay.
It's less of a comment than a question. I was sort of interested in two things. One is how high is that chimney that we're looking at? I mean, we talked about width and whatever, but we didn't talk about how high it sticks up. And that's one question. And then what is the actual setback from Columbia of these structures? Those
Okay,
are my two
and
questions.
I'm not allowed to answer public questions, but the applicant can
Oh,
give
okay,
rebuttal and
sorry, then I'll
I
address.
hope they would comment. Good question. All right,
we can certainly comment.
yes. So the two
Jonathan,
walls.
sorry, Anne, do you want to jump to a floor plan? That might be helpful here.
First. So the lines for get a color. This line is the property line, and the setback is back at that patio. So we are 7 feet or so from the property line. So it's a little more than half of the setback to the property. And for
But-
Columbia Street,
Yeah, I was gonna say the right of way is pretty wide there as also.
Okay,
That's-
and
I believe the main gable form is about 26, 27 feet off of Columbia where it's paved.
the height of the chimney, just to finish this off.
and the height of the chimney is about 24 feet. And we have made an effort to bring the scale of that down by having a metal shroud on top of that for the actual vent to occur. Sorry, that's not 24 feet, that's 21 feet.
Okay. Okay, I made a note of that.
Could I ask, this is Carl Kravitz again, ask one more question? These are questions, I'm not really commenting on it. And I thought I heard possibly that there were no plans to develop lots 7 and 8. Did I hear that properly? But is that appropriate?
I don't think any
question?
of us know the answer to that.
Oh, I thought that I might have overheard that in one of the.
I don't, does the applicant, do you have a client that's on those lots? It's not really germane to this ruling, but.
Okay, well then if it's inappropriate, I'll withdraw it, but.
There's currently no application in no intent to develop lot 7 at this time. They may develop an accessory structure on lot 8 only. So it would just be a structured development at the back of the lot with maybe some site improvements.
Okay, thanks for the comment.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Yes, sir, can I make a public comment?
Yeah, come on up, read your name.
Hi.
And
Into the
then,
microphone, please. And state your
Okay. Is
Let
there
me
a
get
place
out of
I
the
can
way.
sit where I can address the applicants
yeah,
directly?
go ahead and read your name in the mic first.
Oh, yes, sir.
Please address the chairperson.
Oh, okay, hi, Mr. Shambaugh,
Well, it's Mark's fine.
Mark, hi. My name is Pancho Winter, and I live on lot at 801 East Columbia Avenue. So we live in the old Carrier house, and it was built in 1902. It's an NQW, a non-qualifying with restrictions. But I think that my house, and then also Bruce and Jody Wright's house, which is the Tut residence, we are the 2 historic houses that are in the eastern part of Telluride, and the town's gentrified around us as we've lived there. We've been there since 94. And so a lot's gone on, things have changed. And I have a couple of questions to the applicants. And I'm wondering, is there a place I can stand and speak into a mic where they can see me so that they can see who they're speaking to?
You are on a.
Yeah, they can see you.
Oh, can you guys see me?
Yeah, they've got a 360 camera.
Oh, awesome. And
You look pretty good.
oh, good, thank you.
Okay,
Okay, so it's, am I right? It's Mo and Mike and Ann, is that correct?
Yes.
Hi, can you show me please the,
oh, well, actually, we're not allowed to have direct dialogue with the applicant. You can ask questions, yes, and then hopefully they'll put whatever drawing to respond to that question on the screen for you. I'm sorry, that's the rules that I'm adhering to.
yes, sir.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Does the rear of the project on lot 9 go all the way to the northernmost part of the yard, or does it of the lot, or does it go to just the end of the 15-foot rear yard setback?
And if you don't mind, state all of your points first, and then they have one chance to respond, and then unfortunately, that's-
Yes, sir. So then the first question is, does the rear of the project go on the north portion, go all the way to the east end of lot 9, or just to the to the rear 15-foot yard setback. The second comment before that is I am also the owner of lot 5R. It used to be lot 6 and 7, but it's been replatted now so that it's just a single lot. So my wife and I, we own the land that's immediately adjacent to lot 7. So obviously lot 7 is going to be something that we'll be paying attention to. And then this second question is, when I look at the access agreement for lots 5 through 9 from the land use code, and this is what came up when I purchased my first lot, lot number 5, way back in the day in 1997. And so the on the second page of that, it states that the first part of the land use code states that the town's overall interest, it says that in consideration that the town has an interest in accessing these lots from the rear. And then it gives 2 different choices on accessing lots, what were then 5 through 9. The option A, which I think was the one that the town preferred, was through the rear 15-foot rear yard setback. And then option B is through a point on Columbine that you guys have shown, and then on lots 5, 6, and 7, according to this document. But then the part C says, the election of vehicular access by means of A or B above shall be made prior to the first submission of an application for residential development on any lot before the Historic and Architectural Review Commission. And I was just a little bit, I'm hoping that you guys can give me some clarification on how the election of your access points was made. So anyway, those are my 2 questions, and thank you.
Thank you. And again, when they comment, we can't have more dialogue, but thank you for your questions. They're good ones. So, and your comments.
Yes, sir.
Let's see what they have to say.
Thank you. I'll jump in here. Pancho, I am familiar with and have read that access agreement. Our owners shared that with us. I know you've chatted with Tom and Ellie as well. So our understanding of the access agreement, and particularly given that the intent of that being put into place was to limit the number of curb cuts, the number of kind of access points to these properties. One thing that we've identified is, we did not realize that your lots had been consolidated, in the election of the option 2, which it's very clear within that documented agreement that there is an A or a B. I don't think that there is a tone of, one being more important than the other. So we would propose that what we're looking at on the screen is acceptable, and that option B allows for 3 curb cuts in total on this project. It's not that clear. The language around option B is a little odd, but that's a fairly straightforward summary. So we would propose that, particularly with us our owners having 3 of the now 4 lots in the kind of primary, the primary percentage of ownership here, that we certainly are not going to use up all 3 curb cuts. We're only proposing 1 here. And that would leave ample opportunity for accessing the properties that you own off of Columbia, as is more traditional, rather than moving through and creating an artificial alley at the back of the property.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Let's see. I don't see any other public comment. If so, please raise your hand.
Mark, I'm sorry. Did they
He
answer
forgot to comment
my
on the
second question, or one of my questions,
But
which was?
Let me do it because
yes, sir.
We're not supposed to have this back and forth. But anyway, it's good points. Could you answer the other question / comment? About
The garage, the accessory structure is located 5 foot off the property line within that 15-foot setback, which is associated with the principal structure. Again, electing to pursue option B in the land use agreement. There's there's no stipulation that we need to maintain that easement as long as we uphold the intent of option B within that access agreement.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, I don't see any other electronic comments, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion. I move to continue to November 17th, HARC chair meeting, the proposed minor scale and substantial scale new construction 855 East Columbia, Block 20, Lot 9, East Telluride Edition, based on the findings of the staff memo dated September 22nd, 2023, the following conditions. 1 through 12 as written. And I'm going to add 2 more. Number 13 would be, oh, I gotta find a guideline for the fireplace. Well, I guess I can do mass and scale. Let's see, building form. Mass and scale. Elements should be in scale. There it is. Okay. Reduce the width and height of the fireplace chimney per EWT 20 C4. Number 14. Reduce the height of the ridge line of the east-west gable as shown on the south elevation per EWT 20 and EWT 20 C.1. Got it? This mission is based on evidence testimony provided at the public hearing held on September 22nd, 2023. No such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Thank you all very much. Thanks for your questions. And
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
okay, our last project, which somebody can summon them. Okay. Magically, he's hearing. So we will introduce the project as Shenandoah F North Wing Remodel. Consideration of minor scale application for addition to an existing structure that will increase the structure's floor area by less than 10%, but greater than 1,000 square feet per land use code 7203 B2C3. Slot A, Bachman Village, amended plat 1, 325 Coonskin Court is the address. It's accommodations 2, zone district. Owner is Town of Telluride Housing Authority. Applicant Cushing Terrell and Lance McDonald and staff member John Wetzel.
Thank you once again. So this is a minor scale application for a remodel and a small addition to the north wing of Shenandoah's Building F. As you can see on this photo on the screen, Building F is comprised of 3 different wings, and we're talking about just the one on the north, if you can see my cursor. The site is located on the west side of the Shenandoah parking lot, which is also known as Lot L. The Creekside condos are directly to the north, and the other Shenandoah buildings are to the south along Black Bear Road. The property is in the accommodations 2 zone district and the accommodations and River Park corridor treatment areas. The river is just north of the property. The applicants have applied to P&Z for a PUD to minimally increase the maximum site coverage and height. The requests have been made primarily to bring the existing conditions into compliance, which have changed since the building was constructed. No additional height is proposed, but the existing building is slightly over the maximum currently allowed by the land use code. And the remodel might alter the grade, which would ultimately alter the calculated height. So the building is not getting any taller through these alterations. There is a small area of new site coverage proposed at the southeast corner of the building, the building's north wing. A total of 1,689 square feet is proposed to be added to increase the number of units and bedrooms in this wing of Building F. The additions are mostly rooftop additions. But as I mentioned, the overall height of the building will not be increased. The exterior cladding, windows, doors, and balconies will be replaced. The window and door locations will be adjusted slightly, and some of the windows will be enlarged a bit to increase livability. Several trees are proposed to be removed during construction, but a generous replanting plan is proposed and is in the packet. Staff finds that the application is compliant with the land use code and the design guidelines and will be compliant with the PUD if it is approved as requested by planning and zoning next week. Staff recommends approval with the conditions listed here and in the staff memo, which I believe are pretty straightforward, but I'm happy to answer any questions about them if you have any. I did include a condition about this approval being contingent upon the approval of the final planned use development, which is pending. And with us are representatives from Cushing Terrell. Lance McDonald is here in the room with us as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
No, pretty straightforward. I have no questions. Let's hear from the applicant. If you want to share your screen, and it's up to you, but as a suggestion, if you just want to comment on the 4 conditions, I don't have anything else to add. I'm not intending to add other conditions, so it's up to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm happy to share my screen with the application, but John, I really appreciate you walking everyone through it. I think you've captured all of our intents. And again, the big piece of this is really that siding replacement to get more durable materials on site, so that really that longevity is kept into the future. Also lower maintenance, all of those pieces, and getting it more in keeping with the neighborhood. So we are we take no exceptions to the conditions that are listed, and look forward to meeting those as we move forward, pending that PUD approval. Lance, I'm going to kind of kick it to you if you want us to do anything else relative to this.
No, and again, this approach of reskinning these buildings in a way that's, more durable requires a lot less maintenance, painting and things like that is definitely what we're looking at in the future.
And 7 new units?
Well, there's going to be 3 in this building.
Yeah.
Overall, it's 6.
6, okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
But we're still working on it.
Okay,
So, yeah.
all right. Okay, any public comment? There's no public here, but I don't see any out there in outer space or web space. Okay, so thank you. I'm going to make the motion. I agree with staff wholeheartedly. I move to approve the minor scale application at 325 Coonskin Court, Shandoga Building F, North Wing, based on the staff memo dated September 22nd, 2020. The following conditions, 1 and 4 as written. This motion is based on evidence testimony provided public hearing held on September 22nd, 2023, with no such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Revised plans incorporating the conditions of this approval, all 4 of them, shall be submitted within 60 days, or this approval becomes null and void. The rest as written. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thanks.
brevity.
Thank you.
For waiting.
Good luck. Hey, when are you starting, Lance?
Well, we hope to start in November.
Good.
But we still have to do the contractor GMP
Yeah.
financing, council approval, THA approval,
Oh, God.
but we're on a very good path and so hopefully, yes.
Good luck.
Yes, it's,
6 more.
well, 6 more is also gonna make the building last
Well,
a lot longer, so.
all good.
Yeah.
See you. Have a
Thanks,
good weekend,
Lance.
everybody. I will
Bye.
adjourn the meeting at 10:33 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I knew it was a lot longer than
Longer
board
than last
meeting.
board meeting.
okay.
Huh?